Zu links, zu utopisch, zu Klima.
Zu kaufen, die Wochentaz. Die neue linke Wochenzeitung. Immer samstags neu am Kiosk.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for showing up, so many of you, for our taz-talk today. I am more than happy to welcome Rula Daood and Alon-Lee from Standing Together, a Jewish-Palestinian grassroots movement in Israel. Welcome. Before we start our discussion, I have very few organizational things to say. First of all, as you might have noticed, the language of this panel will be English. I hope that's okay for everybody. Second of all, as you all noticed as well, you did not have to pay a fee to come in here. But of course, organizing an event like this does cost money. So if you want to, and if you do have the possibility to, we'd be more than happy if you support the Taz and the Taz talks we are doing through our voluntary solidaric pay system, taztalk. You will find, I think the people who are watching online will see it somewhere, and everybody else can just Google taztalk or write taztalk into their browser. Thank you very much. And the third thing I want to say before we start this panel, all of us are aware that we are talking about a topic that is very emotional for many people, that is connected to a heated debate, especially in these days. And I would like all of us on stage and in the audience to keep this a space where people can say what they want to say without crossing borders of anybody else. So I would like you to, or I would ask you to, first of all, not intervene while we are doing the discussion up here. Like, you will have the opportunity to ask questions in the end of the discussion, that's for sure. But first we would like to, for a while, give the space to Alon-Lee and Rula to say what they have to say, because that's what we came for. And for the discussion later, but I'm sure that's a given thing. Unfortunately, these days, sometimes you have to emphasize this again. There is no space in this room for any anti-Semitic or racist, anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian comments, and I would like all of you to keep it that way. Thank you very much. So we are almost to the day, 2 months after the 7th of October, on which Hamas fighters attacked communities in the south of Israel, a music festival in the south of Israel, and assaulted, murdered, and kidnapped numerous people. And we're also almost 2 months into the Israeli military operation in Gaza that cost the lives of 15,000 people already, I think, causing a humanitarian catastrophe, and is still going on, like after a short ceasefire that we have seen for about a week. That has also seen the release of some of the hostages, while others are still held in Gaza. And in the middle of this disaster, it is more important than ever to give a platform, to give the stage to people who choose a different path and who advocate for peace and for human rights for everybody. And this is why I am more than happy that you're here today. I know you have other places to be at the moment. Thank you for being here anyways. Alon-Lee, Rula, you are activists from Standing Together, a grassroots movement in Israel that has been founded in 2016 and that advocates and mobilizes Jews and Palestinians from Israel in the struggle for peace, for equality, and for social and climate justice. Alon-Lee, you're not just one of the national co-directors of Standing Together, you're also one of the founders. Although you started your political career unionizing waiters in Israel, and you already played a prominent role in the social protests in Israel in 2011. Welcome, thank you for being here today. Rula, you're also one of the national co-directors of Standing Together. You're also a speech pathologist, and you started your activism in your hometown, Kufr Yassif, in the Galilee, and went on promoting Jewish-Arab partnership in several mixed cities, Jewish-Palestinian mixed cities in Israel, and you have been active as a community organizer. Welcome. So the ceasefire ended on Friday. There are still more than 130 hostages in Gaza. The bombardment, do you say that like that in English? Anyways, the military operation in Gaza has resumed. There's numerous people being killed every day. And the polarization seems to become bigger and bigger by the day. Rula, how, in days like this, how do you advocate for peace?
That's a tough question. First of all, hello to everybody. Thank you very much for coming tonight and for having us here. Maybe I would start a bit by saying that living in Israel-Palestine is not an easy task. It is not an easy reality. It's a complicated one, but it also has some of its positive things and more than negative things. But one true thing is that our lives in Israel-Palestine are very intertwined together. These days, especially after the 7th of October, it has been very hard, especially the first 2 weeks, to give any other discourse except what our government, the Israeli government, said about demolishing Gaza and conquering Gaza and bombing Gaza in order to eradicate Hamas. But our government didn't even take the time to try to contain the fear, the anger that people felt after the 7th of October. Each and every one of us has a different story on where we were at the 7th of October, how did we wake up, and to what reality did we really wake up. And each and every one of us has its own complexity in that reality, but in standing together, we try to bring that complexity and to find out how, in such a difficult place in the Middle East, in Israel-Palestine, we can still think of joint communities, we can still think of joint struggles, and we can still think of bigger things that are maybe dreams or even hopes of having a real safety and having real peace, a Israeli-Palestinian peace that can give to both peoples who live in that piece of land real independence. And the 7th of October was, for me at least, was a terrifying day. I woke up to sirens at 6:30 in the morning, and as many people didn't really understand what's happening. Why are we hearing sirens right now? I live in Jaffa today. I do come from the upper north in the Galilee, but I've been in the center, living in the center of Israel for the last 20 years. And the 7th of October, I woke up to sirens. I went, I looked for a shelter, and I didn't really understand we're going into war. And the first thing I did was just looking at, social media, because in social media you have like all the information you need and you want, and it's a bit overwhelming sometimes. So when I looked, I started getting the images of what happened in the South, what was happening to people. I started getting really harsh videos of people being killed, kidnapped. And the point where I was really afraid is when I understood that the party that was held in the South, you've known that there was a party and thousands of people were there, young people. One of my friends, close friends, who is Palestinian, was supposed to be at that party. And I started calling her to understand what's really happening, and she didn't really answer me. And like, for my luck, she answered 2 hours after, and then I said, "Where are you?" And she said, "I'm home, like I'm in the shelter also." And I said, you were supposed to go to the party?" And she said, "Yes, but my friends were supposed to come with me, but we didn't, we chose not to go, a day before." So I had this kind of relief, because my close friends didn't really, wasn't there. Nothing bad really happened to her. But I know many other friends and people that I have worked with, they were partners to a vision, a bigger vision of peace, that where some of them were killed at that massacre, some of them were also kidnapped. And 2 days after that horrific day, social media, I started seeing people dying in Gaza, my people dying in Gaza. I started seeing pictures and videos of bombing of entire buildings, entire families dying, innocent people losing their lives. And as if all of that wasn't enough, as a Palestinian citizen of Israel, I didn't have the real ability or the space to talk about my fear, or to talk about what's really happening, or to show any kind of humanity, to say even, to post something that said, "My heart is with Gaza," was not acceptable back then. To say anything about the politics of my government was not accepted. And people started being persecuted by the police in Israel because of saying things that to other people, to our government, was not right or was not patriotic. And with all of that happening, I felt a kind of, my world did a bit collapsed, and it took me a few days to stand up, to rise up and think, what do we do right now, and how do we do it? With so much pain everywhere, so much killing, with a discourse that will lead all of us, again, Israelis and Palestinians, to a bigger a humanitarian crisis and a bigger problem of more hatred between the two people. I kind of was looking like so many people on something to do. And being a part of Standing Together and a grassroots movement that has thousands of people and activists in all through Israel, I was able to feel the partnership at the first week. I was able to feel other people's courage acts, and I was able to find a space for me, for my pain, for the joint pain we all had since the 7th of October. And then it was, I think by the first activity we did at the first week, I understood that if we as activists, if we as people who believe in different paths, in solutions, in taking a different political path than the one we have right now, if we stand down, if we don't say anything, if we don't act, we are all lost. And there's not going to be any change in Israel-Palestine, not for Jewish people and not for Palestinian people. And so I understood we need to mobilize more people and organize people and ask them to come to rallies that we held, so we can have that space to just basically, the first step, talk and share the fear and the feelings we had, and then to talk together and understand how do we really bring a different discourse to the Israeli society. And the first step we understood that we need to do is to build that political will in our society in order to have the ability to make any change in the Israeli community and Israeli society. And that was the first step we did. And it took us, I think, 2 more weeks of rallies on bringing people together in order to be able to have more activities inside of Israel with also Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel.
Alon-Lee, there is, you have, Standing Together has been criticizing the war in Gaza. Now, some people say, or it's a legitimate question, like, how about the right to self-defense of Israel? Because Hamas did attack Israeli citizens, did kill and did kidnap people. And how do you deal with an organization that has shown that they do not hold on to like international law, humanitarian law? Like, how do you, and they have announced that they will attack again and again, and that their goal is for Israel to cease existing. So how do you react to something like this?
I see we're starting with the toughest questions possible. Hi, good evening. It is a challenging question. It is a tough question. It's a tough reality to try and navigate and to try and answer to. It's true, Hamas committed a massacre. Hamas committed inhumane slaughtering of women and children and elderly people. They kidnapped entire families. They committed crimes against humanity in the 7th of October. And they have committed that that's only the beginning and that they will do it again and again and again. And I think the first step of my answer is to understand that Hamas is not only the enemy of the Israeli people, it is also a catastrophic leadership for the Palestinian people. And it must be said. It must be said, and also it must be said with the same breath that Hamas does not represent the entire Palestinian people. As much as our government and any other government does not represent entirely their people. And then you ask yourself, how did we get here? In order to understand also what to do now. And I do think it's very important to understand that our government, the Israeli government, has done everything they can in the last decade and a half to strengthen Hamas and to weaken the Palestinian Authority. And if you don't want to believe me, you can believe the open and direct quotes of Netanyahu, our prime minister, of Bezalel Smotrich, our minister of finance, that have said that Hamas is a value if you want to prevent a Palestinian state, which they want to prevent a Palestinian state. And that the Palestinian Authority is actually the real problem because working and cooperating with them will lead to a strategic problem to Israel, which is independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. So that's the paradigm. That's the conception Israel worked with, the strategy of Israel in the last decade and a half. And I do think that at the moment, we're still in this paradigm. And I will say something, it might be tricky to say, but I really strongly believe so. Whenever we bomb a full neighborhood in Gaza, killing hundreds of people in one bombing, Hamas gets stronger. Whenever we kill a family of 30 people, Hamas gets stronger. Hamas is an extremist, unlegitimate organization that is feeding out of extremism. This reality is still in the same paradigm of strengthening Hamas, while the government, our government, is saying openly that they will never allow the Palestinian Authority to come and assume control over Gaza because they are actually worse in their eyes, even though they are not committing terrorism, than the Hamas. And then the second step will be asking questions, and then what? So I believe that we must put some question marks around this war, a lot of question marks around this war. So we will kill 30,000 Palestinians. And then what? So we will assume we reconquer Gaza Strip. And then what? So we rebuild settlements in Gaza, as the right wing in Israel calls right now to do. And then what? Is this going to be giving us safety, security to the Israeli people? Is having daily clashes between our military, controlling another 2.2 million people, not talking about the West Bank at the moment, controlling daily, civilians, is having those clashes is a better reality than today? So I believe that tactics should serve a strategy, and a strategy should serve an objective. And I want to ask, what is the strategy? I understand there's a lot of tactics at the moment, the war, but what is the strategy? What is the objective? I do think that if we try to look from the top down, we will understand that the objective is to continue the status quo of our government. This is the objective, to prevent a Palestinian state and to maintain this status quo that they are maintaining for so long. So the strategy is to strengthen Hamas, and then the tactic is another war and another war, eternal war, and that's the project of the right wing of Israel. And this is why we should present an alternative that starts from an objective. Our objective would be safety, would be Israeli-Palestinian peace, and it would mean necessarily that all the people that are living on this land will be equal and free and independent, because we believe that's the only way to achieve safety. Point. And then the strategy would be to work with the Palestinian Authority, with the moderates, to understand that Hamas is not only an organization in Gaza, it exists also in the West Bank, it exists in South Lebanon, but it's also an idea. And in order to kill an idea, a military operation is not the way. You need to present a better perspective, a better idea. You need to give hope to the people that are, right now turning to Hamas. Hamas is getting stronger at the moment, as we said, turning to Hamas because Israel proves again and again that that's the only way they know. So the strategy will be to strengthen the Palestinian Authority, to strengthen the perspectives of having independence and equality to all the people, so people can choose the better idea over the very murderous idea that controls right now our land. And then the tactics is a good question, because Hamas cannot exist on our borders if they say even they're going to commit it again and again and again. So I do believe we need international umbrella to deal with this moment. We need the international cooperation. It must consist of the Arab countries. It must consist of the EU and the US administration, but it also must consist the Palestinian Authority, which we're at the moment creating it as a weaker and weaker entity. And that is going to lead to a worse reality than we are facing today.
Both of you have talked about security and safety now. Security has been one of the top political issues in Israel, in Israeli politics for a very long time. It has also been Netanyahu's ticket for a very long time. But when you talk about safety and security, you mean something else than he does. What is the difference?
Well, I think, first of all, Netanyahu back in Israel, in the Israeli society, we have generations who haven't known any other prime minister except Bibi Netanyahu. So there is a problem. We're starting with a problem. And one of the biggest campaigns Netanyahu had and still is having until the 7th of October is talking about security. But when he talks about security, he means controlling millions of Palestinians. And he means still sending soldiers, 18 years old with guns, soldiers, to keep the borders and to control the lives of millions of Palestinians, whether they are in the West Bank or at the borders in Gaza, and having siege on Gaza. And his idea of security was on building more, a blockage and putting more cameras around Gaza, that all of that talk and that campaign kind of just, vanished on the 7th of October, because people in Israel on the 7th of October woke up to sirens, woke up to missiles and understood that we are going into a war that has been going now for more than 50 days. So when he speaks about security, he doesn't mean real security. He means, in his own mind, controlling the lives of others without bringing safety neither to the Israelis nor to the Palestinians. When we speak about safety, we understand that we live in a place where you have two peoples. You have Jewish people and you have Palestinian people. And in that same piece of land, both of us are not going anywhere. Palestinians are not going to leave, and Jewish are not going to leave. And for me and for Alon-Lee, that place, both of us, we call it home, and it's the only home both of us know. So when we speak about security, we speak also about the safety and the independence on each and every one of us. And we understand that security can be achieved only when we have real independence and safety for both peoples. And then when we have that independence, we can get real security for both peoples. So our idea of security gives both of us a place for calling the place we grew up in a homeland, and also gives both of us the independence and the liberty we've been seeking for so many years, and having just more and more wars with Bibi's campaign and his idea of really fake security. So when we talk about that security, we mean each and every one's right in Israel, Palestine, to live a free life, a secure life, and an independent life. That is the security we want, and we need and must understand that we can't really have safety for the Jewish people if we don't have independence for the Palestinian people. And we will never get real independence for the Palestinian people if you don't have safety for the Jewish people who live at the same piece of land.
Thank you. So, in the middle of this situation with ongoing polarization, is there, like, how are reactions within Israel to your work, to your calls for peace? Are people listening more, or are people not listening anymore at all?
Maybe we should start, trying to describe how is our reality so polarized. I mean, you probably know it because it's also polarized here as well. But in Israel, picture it like this. You can wake up in the morning in Tel Aviv, being a Jewish citizen of Israel, turning on your phone, going into Instagram, seeing stories of the hostages, seeing stories of the massacre in the party, reading all the testimonies of the people that came back, and feeling a lot of fear and trauma and holding it and being sure that that's the only reality. That's what's going on right now. That is what is true and just at the moment. And then 20, 40, an hour from there, you can turn on your phone in el-Fachem or Nazareth, two Palestinian cities in Israel, go to your Instagram and see stories of dead babies, seeing stories of mothers screaming out their life about the family that has been bombed at the moment in Gaza, fathers running with a child dead in their hands, and you feel the fear and you feel the trauma. And that's the reality for you. That's what's true. That's what's just. And never, ever in our lives we've experienced such trauma on both sides. Never we felt so polarized and that the gaps are so big, between our experiences. And the honest truth is that both are true. Both things exist on the same time. And what we're trying to do is to bridge, first of all, to bridge this gap, to create a space in Israel of Israeli citizens, both Jewish citizens and Palestinian citizens of Israel, to bring people together and to create this space of being able to hold the pain of both sides, being able to see the other, being able to be understanding that the reality is very complicated at the moment, that everyone is suffering. Also, you know, the missiles, they don't discriminate. The massacre did not discriminate. Inside Israel, we are suffering the same reality. We are facing the same consequences. We are worried. And believe us, our generation and people that are younger than us, we are all thinking of immigrating out of the country at the moment because life is not good in Israel. Life was not good even before the 7th of October, right? It's expensive. We don't have enough good enough salaries. It's very polarized. It's very violent. But right now, everyone is afraid. And we're trying to create this space of bridging, of feeling the trauma together. So we have rallies, Jewish Palestinian rallies across the country. Every 3rd to 5th day, we move to a different city. It's not legal at the moment to demonstrate in around the issue of Gaza. And we stand in solidarity with Gaza. We're not hiding it. We're very proud of it. So it's not legal to do that at the moment. The police, actually the chief of police said a few weeks back, if you want to demonstrate in solidarity with Gaza, we will put you in a bus to Gaza. That's a quote of the chief of police. And so we found a way to bypass it. So we have rallies in venues. We move between cities, and hundreds of Jewish and Palestinian citizens are coming to each of the rallies, and we're growing. A lot of people are joining the movement. A lot of people are following us, are coming to our Jewish-Arab solidarity networks or rallies, and it's hard. It's actually the only point of hope we have at the moment to see Rula standing on the stage, crying sometimes or talking about the pain, and other people crying together with her, understanding that maybe we cry for different people, maybe we cry for different families, maybe we cry because of different, killings, but we cry together, we see each other, we are able to understand that we need to move somehow further from this moment together, and that without that, not only that we will face Hamas and the massacre, we're facing a war inside our society, a war that can come to our streets, that can tear up our communities, that can bring us to the lowest point. You know, it is the darkest moment of our lifetime. It is. We cannot go around it. It's true. So the thing we're trying to do is not only out of the brain. It's not only to say, yes, we understand that only Israeli-Palestinian peace will bring safety and security. It's also that. But we are very much concerned for our lives. And I think the fact that we are able to show these emotions, it brings people at the moment, because people are looking for these spaces. They are looking for this ability to hold something that our government has denied us from the very first moment. They didn't even step in front of coming to address the public, saying, we're grieving, we're broken, something terrible happened to us on the 7th of October. It was something that it's difficult to move, on from. They didn't come and say, let's have a day of grief. They didn't say, we want to meet the families. It took them more than 2 weeks even to meet the families of the hostages as a government. They denied all of these feelings from us. So we try to create it, and I think it's a radical thing to do at the moment. It might sound from here, maybe it's minor, but it's a very radical thing to hold in Israel.
The war is not just a big topic in Israel, in Palestine, but feels like the whole world is debating about it. How did you, as a leftist movement advocating for peace in Israel, how did you perceive the international response to October 7th and to everything that has happened since?
Well, okay. So I got asked this question 2 days ago, and at each and every day I think I maybe give a different answer, because it depends on how many people do I really meet and what things do I really see and what does the social media really brings to me. But being in Germany since, like, we've been here since Sunday, and we've met a couple of people, and we've seen like what's also happening here in the community in Germany. And I think that the main thing I get, or we get, is that we see the people want to do and want to take part and be part and give a pressure, a real pressure on what's happening. But we also see that that kind of pressure is also being polarized. People in abroad communities are becoming more radical, are choosing just one side. And I know that at times of war, it's much easier to choose one side. It's like either you are pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, either you like stand with Israel or you stand with Gaza and the people in Gaza. And what we really do back home in Israel, Palestine, is that we advocate for all people. We talk about everybody that's living right now under this war, Jewish and Palestinian people, people who live in Israel and people who are right now suffering from the bombings in Gaza. And what I say and what I have been saying, that if we, with all the complexity and the pain and actually being persecuted back home because of saying we stand with Gaza, we want this war to end, we need another solution. We are talking about a peace because we really want peace. If we can hold that complexity and if we can really go out and advocate for a different politics with all the hard circumstances we having back home, you can do the same. And right now, what we see the international community doing is very different from that message, is far away from that message. The international community is picking just one side. And we want you to go outside. We want you to have demonstrations. We need you to go outside and fight for us. But when I say for us, I mean both people. Both of us who are living in persecution, both of us who are living in wars for a decade and a half, and both of us who are suffering from leaders who don't really want our benefit. They look on what they benefit in their own political agenda, while people are dying in Israel, Palestine. So if you go outside, and we really want you to go outside to demonstrate, to shout out, to be part, to play a very important role in what's happening to us in Israel, Palestine, but we really want you to be on our side, on the people's side, not just picking one side, because again, if we can hold that complexity, I don't see a reason why you can't, especially in such a places in Germany, where you have so much ethnic groups and very various communities living together. So please go out and demonstrate, but always remember, when you go out, you are shouting out for all of us, not just Palestinians in Gaza, not just Jewish people and Palestinians inside of Israel, for both sides, because we both deserve liberty, freedom, independence, and security.
I'll start the next question similar to the last one. As a leftist movement within Israel, where being leftist is not the easiest thing, Alon-Lee, how did you perceive the international leftist reactions to October 7th and what happened since?
Well, we were disappointed. I guess it's easy to say that we were disappointed, but with some, maybe it's important to start it, not with all the left internationally, not with all the groups, but with some of the responses, the initial responses on the 7th, and with some of them since the 7th, we were horrified with the lack of ability to see us as humans, with the lack of ability to recognize crimes against humanity, with the lack of ability of some forces to recognize the nature of reality and the questions that are on the table at the moment, whether it's just like waving and talking about historic justice or talking about a solution and trying to help somehow navigating this moment into a better reality. And maybe I should be even more blunt around it because I'm trying to be delicate. Having an academic discussion about this does not meet our reality. Talking about settlers' colonialism is not relevant to our lives. Entertaining this kind of thought might be very interesting if you want to write an essay. I would read this essay. Come on, it could be interesting. Sit in the library of the new school or in Columbia University, pick your brain and write the most interesting theoretical article about why I am a settler colonialist and what should I do when I meet a terrorist from Hamas trying to shoot me. Maybe I should raise my arms in the air and say, shoot me, I'm a settler colonialist. But reality is more complicated than this, right? And having a fantasized theory about what you want to see happening does not meet reality, and actually, it does not help. And if you're not able to help in this moment, sit aside and try and be silent. Because we're facing death. We're facing wars. We're facing casualties. We're facing the occupation. We're facing the most terrible reality can be imagined, and it's getting worse. So we don't want to be waved with the responses of our friends internationally and then being blamed, they're left, you're left, look at you guys, you're the same. So understanding the complexities, understanding the fact, which should be the very beginning of the discussion of any kind of discussion about Israel or Palestine, that millions of Palestinians live on this land and they're going nowhere, but also millions of Jewish people are living in the same land and they're going nowhere. And even if you have fantasies, you can be delusional, but the fact is not going to change. So base your discussion based on this fact, on the basis of people living there and understanding that they need, they need things. They need to have security. They need to have existence. And then I think we should also address a different thing. For so many years, Netanyahu went across the world, and whenever someone even mentioned a boycott over the settlements, he said, no, that's a boycott over the entire Israel. The project of Netanyahu was to completely identify him, the right wing, the settlements, with the people of Israel, saying it's all one blurb of things, of entity. And I think it was so effective in many ways that a lot of the left wing has adopted this approach, and they cannot identify the Israeli society as a society. They don't see us as people. They don't see us as a society with fears and hopes and conflicts with our government. You remember, we have a protest for 10 months until the 6th of October that is actually getting the support of the majority of people in Israel. We have conflicts with our government. We are not our government. Any society is not their government. So forgetting that is something a really right-wing thing to do, to really forget that we also have a society, which means we have conflicts and we are people. And I think that when you do that, it's very easy to flatten the Israeli existence and to portray us as, all settlers. And we do recognize the occupation. We do recognize the systematic oppression. We do recognize the systematic racism pointed against the Palestinian citizens of Israel. But because we recognize those things, we are working towards a solution, not towards holding a truth in our hands and waving it. Because as much as you want to condemn reality, it's more important to change reality. And I do think that having this kind of discussion is just not helpful. And yeah, we were hurt by it.
This task that you're having, it's hasn't been an easy one before the 7th of October. It has not become easier. Rula, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the situation of the Palestinian peace activist in Israel, and because I can imagine that your challenges might be a bit different from Alon-Lee's.
That is Well, we have a joke back home, like both of us, all of us as activists also, about like when somebody calls you and you answer and he say, hi, how are you? Then you answer, still out of jail. Haven't been jailed yet, haven't been arrested yet. The situation is so extreme that we have these kind of jokes because we know as activists, and especially as Palestinian activists inside of Israel, that the day will come that we will be arrested just because of saying something, anything. And since the 7th of October, inside of Israel, the actions the government had taken and also the police was to narrow the ability to have even, the freedom of speech, of expressing yourself, of saying what you think, and not talking about criticizing the government. That is another level. But even saying anything about the death that is happening in Gaza we were not able to say anything. At the first few days since Israel started bombing Gaza, actresses, very famous people, Palestinian people from living in Israel, who even dared saying anything about the pain in Gaza and the kids in Gaza. And I'm not saying anything else, like not just saying free Gaza, even just saying, look at the kids who are dying. My heart is with Gaza. They were taken by the police. They were arrested. They were photographed with handcuffs with an Israeli flag. And that picture basically, in all over the social media in order to tell me my place right now as a Palestinian citizen of Israel during this war. So there is persecution everywhere, and not just activists, not just known people, also politicians, political figures inside of Israel, Palestinian political figures were also arrested. Some of them wanted to go out, called out for a demonstration, to demonstrate after 2 weeks, I think, or maybe 3 weeks, to go out and demonstrate in a very simple ask, to stop the war, to stop the bloodshed. Nothing else, not criticizing anything else, just go out and stop and call out to stop the war, the bloodshed, because all lives are equal. And the police came and took them. And we were talking about political figures in the Knesset, in the Israeli Knesset. So what's really happening is that we have much more persecution right now. And it's very, let's say, like people are really afraid, which makes you don't really want to talk anymore or like hold a statement because you are afraid you will be jailed. You are afraid, and it is really happening in Israel. People are being kicked from their campuses, students who said anything about what's happening, people who just had a small talk at their work about what's happening. They were kicked out and fired from their work. We have doctors, very known doctors, very well-known doctors, just for having a picture on their Facebook that has something written in Arabic. They were taken into the administration and had a really serious talk on what did you write on your Facebook. So our spaces became, we became very afraid in these spaces. And when you have such a persecution and you are a minority, you get really afraid for your own life, for your job, for your kids. And most of us, my generation, born in the 80s, we are born to parents who lived the martial laws in Israel, where there was martial laws on Palestinian citizens of Israel, but you couldn't go out, you couldn't stay home after the 6 o'clock, you were jailed, prisoned for any reason, just the government would like to take you to jail. So we were brought up in a constant fear from the regime, from the Israeli government, and that fear is now going, what our parents had, we are kind of having right now. But in spite and despite all of that, I believe that I still have some kind of privilege. I am an activist. I am a part of a grassroots movement that it has also Jews and Palestinians, and I do have lawyers with me. Like before I write anything, I check if I wrote, a sentences that cannot be translated into, terrorism, because that is one of the main sentences that is said against people who say anything.
Everyone
you
is
are
a
advocating for
at
terror.
the moment, yeah.
Yeah. And I still have some kind of a privilege. And I want to use my privilege on shouting out on saying different things, on talking about what's really happening to the Palestinian citizens inside of Israel, but also to stand in solidarity with my people in Gaza and my people in the West Bank who have been enduring so much violence by the settlers in the past month that we have already 180 people jailed, the West Bank. You have many cases of settlers violence in the West for different politics, and we chose, and we know what's on stake basically, but we chose to be here. And even coming here, was a really tough decision for us to leave home at times of of war and coming here and really speaking. But again, I understand that I have a privilege, and I want to use that privilege in order to make a difference, any kind of difference, whether it's in my society or it's in the societies abroad and also in Germany.
I do want to add. I do want to add a short sentence about this privilege. We were so lucky to get to this moment ready, and with an existing movement that also went through the war of May 2021. It was a very tough moment for us. Speaking to two different people at a time of war, at a time of polarization, is a challenging task, I would say the least. It was very challenging in May 2021, and having this community at the moment, having this space, having the ability to hold a political loaded discussion in our leadership of the movement, asking what to do now, how to talk to the public, what is the message, and surviving this, existing in this complexity is something really not to take in granted. I do think that we are the only left, daily engaged with the public at the moment in Israel. We are the only one that is growing, but we are also the only one that is holding this Jewish-Palestinian partnership in a daily basis. Our staff is Jewish-Palestinian, our leadership is Jewish-Palestinian. Hundreds of new young people joined the movement, mainly young Palestinian, by the way, citizens of Israel joined the movement since the 7th of October, and we're lucky. We are lucky to have this. It's really not to take granted.
You just said that you're growing, which leads me to the question whether you believe that once this war is over, hopefully soon, there is a real chance for a political change in Israel? And if so, in which direction? For the better or for the worse?
Well, I'm going to be more optimistic.
It
might go both ways, but I think as much as the 7th of October was really harsh, and as much as our reality is difficult back home in Israel, Palestine, I still think that the 7th of October and everything that happened since then has brought us also an opportunity to make a change, to bring a different discourse and to talk about solutions. Because right now, what's happening inside of the Israeli society is that we have a government that is leading a discourse that says we will eradicate Gaza, we will conquer Gaza, we will, everybody, all the Palestinians who live in Gaza should leave Gaza. And that is the only discourse that we are hearing right now in Israel in the politics. And I think that discourse needs to have, a contra, needs to have other voices, other people saying different words, different politics, that these politics talk about having real safety inside of the Israeli society. Because everybody understands now that managing the conflict, managing the occupation, or even Gaza didn't really work. And everybody is now talking about the Palestinians who live also in Gaza and the Palestinians who live in the West Bank. And everybody inside of the Israeli society, the majority of the Israeli society, understands that we need a solution. There must be a solution, because we cannot keep on living a war after a war after a war after a war. We can't be losing our people on both sides to more wars because of the politics that we've been having until now. And I think the 7th of October does really give us an opportunity to make that change. And in order to make it possible, we work in our society, in the Israeli society. We are community organizers. We believe that by organizing our society, only then, by convincing people, by building the political will from the people and with the people to bring a solution, we can make a real difference inside the Israeli society. But we also believe that having a pressure from communities abroad, from governments abroad, into talking also about a different discourse and talking about real peace, an opportunity to have a dialogue and a political solution is necessary. Because when you pressure our government to understanding that, it becomes more legit, and it gives us more place and more space to talk about a different discourse. So I think we need, both. We need to work in both ways. We work on our society, and we also need the international community bringing pressure on our government, because we do have an opportunity now. We can't really go back to the way it was before the 7th of October, and we do realize that. But in order not to go back there, we need an alternative. And we are working on building that alternative inside of our society, and we would appreciate a help also from the outside communities.
I have one last question for now before we'll open the space also for... I'll ask another question. Before we'll open the space also for your questions, and I did not say that in the beginning. Dear everybody who's watching online, you can also ask questions. There is the chat or comment function on YouTube. Feel free to write your questions and we'll try to involve them. Now I have a question for Alon-Lee, as demanded from the audience. So peace is really a long-term goal, but we're in the middle, or you are in the middle of a war. So talking about immediate action, what has to happen right now? What do you think has to happen?
I want to connect it also to the last question of spaces and opportunities, because I think politics eventually is about competition, and I'm a socialist. We witnessed the weird anomaly that I speak about competition in a good way. But politics is about competition. When you don't have competition in your political system, as we don't have in Israel, you get 50 shades of the same political idea, just in minor versions. But we need to create a competitive political idea in our society in order to build this political majority Rula is talking about. We need to understand that the only way, eventually, and we can have a lot of discussions about it, but eventually the only way to end the occupation and achieve freedom and safety to the people, and no matter if you come from the angle of the Palestinians or the angle of the Israelis, the only way to do so is not by international pressure, because no president of the US or China or India or the UK will wake up one day on the good side of the bed and say, today I want to put pressure on the Israeli government and force peace upon the Israelis. It's not going to happen. Sorry, I wish, but the world has a lot of problems and it's actually leaning and turning to worse directions. And then, of course, armed Palestinian resistance is not going to beat the Israeli army, right? It's not going to achieve anything, and actually it's going to hurt innocent civilians. So it does leave us with a very simple understanding that only by building a political majority within the Israeli society, we can change this reality. Israel, like it or not, is the hegemonic force on the ground. It holds the power. So we need to fight for the power in our society in order to change this reality. And understanding that is understanding that we need to build this alternative and fight for a big idea of Israeli-Palestinian peace, of equality and freedom and independence to all people. And as we spoke before, that's the objective. This is what we want to fight for. And then asking those questions of tactics, of what should happen tomorrow morning, I would say it should be simple. I do think we are talking about people's lives eventually. And 50 days of war, for example, got one hostage released with a military operation. One was released. But when we look about the diplomatic agreement that was achieved, we're talking about 108 hostages that were released. Maybe that's a path. Maybe there's something there. And I do think agreements and diplomacy saves lives. We can witness and see that. So that's one thing that should happen not tomorrow morning, but actually tonight. The Israeli government must agree to do everything they can to release the hostages. Actually, tonight, there were representatives of the families of the hostages, plus some hostages that came back, they were released, meeting with the war cabinet in Israel, demanding exactly that, saying that there's no time to waste, that, these hostages can lose their lives as we speak, and other people are losing their lives in Gaza as we speak. So we must come to the terms, the grounds to come to this agreement to expand the hostages deal that was achieved and unfortunately abandoned from both parties. Hamas has a big role in that too. But if Israel says, no, we are not willing to go from 10 hostages a day to 8, yes, it's unfair. Yes, it does not look good, but still 8 people will come back every day. And, this discussion starts to happen at the moment. The families of the hostages do say 8 is better than nothing. And right now, we have nothing.
Thank you. We are a bit behind, but we also started a bit behind. So I would say we still have the 30 minutes for questions from the audience in the room and online. I think my colleague with the microphone is back there. I know that many of you want to ask questions, which is why I would ask you, and I know it's difficult because it never works with audience questions. Please keep your questions short. Please ask questions. Don't give monologues. So we can fit as many of your questions into this evening as possible. And I do not see very well, but I see a question here, and here, and here, and here, and here.
I have 2 short questions. The first one is for Rula. I'm wondering, how is it for you as a Palestinian, and what are the reactions you get from Palestinians, allies? Because I know that we've been trying to arrange Israeli-Palestinian work here, even before the 7th of October, and because of the fear of normalization and cancellation, there's a lot of issues. So I'm wondering if you can tell a bit more. And Alon-Lee, you talked about the Palestinian Authority as this, what you guys are seeing as an option to control Gaza. When we talk about Palestinian Authority, it's not the democratic, it's very corrupted. So how is this what you are suggesting as a solution?
Can I ask, do you mean inside of the Israeli society, or you mean Palestinian communities, organizations outside of the outside? But first of all, I must say that standing together, we work inside of the Israeli society. The work we do, the community organizing we do, is inside of our society, because we believe that change must be done, first of all, in our society in order to build that political will. Right now, I think first of all, we didn't really have, any relations with organizations in Gaza. We've known several activists that the last time I think we talked to them was 2021, another war. And then we just lost contact. And in the West Bank, we also know a few activists. Like there are like combats for peace that we used to have different demonstrations with them on the border. But since I think 2 or 3 years, we've didn't really have activities, because most of the work we do is inside of the Israeli society. And I can tell you about what's happening in our society, that Alon-Lee have said we as a movement have been growing, and we've had more Palestinian young people joining and looking for a place where they can do or even feel secure, and they're coming into standing together. And I think since the 7th of October, the kind of how do you say it? Thank you. The cooperation we are having inside of the Israeli society, I think it's one of the most like real cooperations we've had like 5 or 6 years before, because people understood that they have a responsibility and they stood up. The government didn't do anything for the people since the 7th of October, and people wanted to hold that place of also shared society, but also their own society. And we had many cooperations between citizens of Israel. But again, most of our work, because it's inside of the Israeli society, so we don't really have a work done with other organizations in the West Bank. And of course in Gaza it's a very different story. You can't really have a connection with, unfortunately.
I will add, before talking about the Palestinian Authority, I work very closely with our content department in the movement, and we do have kind of a new English page in Instagram, and we write also in English in Twitter. And we get attacked a lot by Palestinians, I would say right-wing, from the right-wing of the Palestinian spectrum. Personally, I'm also very active in social media, and I've been called to go back to Poland so many times by Palestinians in the last 2 months, and I'm not even from Poland. But yeah, it can be very challenging. It can be very toxic. But we also see a lot of support. And I think as much as we understand that there's a fight inside the Israeli society over the path, there's also a fight inside the Palestinian society over what is a legitimate resistance, and also over the path. So that's one thing. About the Palestinian Authority, I don't think we're in a game of having the best fantasy we want, and then we say, yeah, that's we need to settle for alternatives. And the best alternative at the moment is to see that there is a force on the ground that is existing, is corrupt, is not a good leadership in many different ways. It's also very repressive a lot of times to their own people, but it is widely accepted as a leadership of the Palestinian people, of some of the Palestinian people, and we need to take what we can. And I do think it would very much help this Palestinian Authority to hold elections, to have a refreshed leadership. It will be very good also to the ability of us in Israel to cooperate with them and to point at them as a partner. But we need to stick and to hold whatever we can get. We're not in a privileged place of say, they're not, so nothing can be done.
I'll fill in the question from the internet because it actually was the first question to come. It might be a very quick answer because I think you have already answered it. I will ask it again just to see if you have anything to add to what you said before. The question is for both of you. What would you like to see Israel's allies like the US or Germany do or not do? Pressure, demand ceasefire, what? You already said something about it. Maybe you want to elaborate more, or you say it's answered.
I can say something very quick about what does it mean, like a question that I think exists in the sphere at the moment, and even much before the 7th of October. And it is, what does it mean to be a good friend of Israel? I think maybe a good friend will not see us being very drunk and hand us another glass of wine or beer. We're in Germany. And maybe a good friend will tell you, maybe I'll take you home to bed to sleep, not giving us another billions of dollars for the settlements, and so on. So I do think understanding friendship is to support the interest of the Israeli people and not identifying it with the interest of the Israeli government. We have the most extreme government in our history. We have people in our government that support Jewish supremacy, racist laws, dismantling the Supreme Court, all the very terrible list you want to find happening here by the populist right wing in Europe. We are the prototype of it for so many years. So don't support this government and think you're supporting the Israeli people. Be a good friend of the Israeli people and try to see and look for the interest of the Israeli people and understand that safety is coming with liberty and freedom, and without that we will never have safety. We're not happy about it, but that's reality.
There was a question over here.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for being here first. It's really helpful to to understand a bit of both sides. I wonder what you mean by international community, because I'm a DJ and artist myself in the scene, and I experience a lot of extreme views, and how you said also about the 7th of October, nobody, most of the people didn't show any empathy about the 7th of October. And I think for most Israeli and Jewish people all around the world, it's very difficult because they're always being associated with the Israeli government, what is really dangerous for them. And I don't see a community in my art scene at the moment. It's really polarizing at the moment, and it's really pro-Palestine, what is good. There's great support, there's great solidarity, what is really important as well. But the question is actually, what do you mean by international community? Because I wonder if you mean the Western media, the Western governments, or...
No, my intent was talking about communities abroad, all communities, not just as one, but we have been seeing the world react to what's happening in Israel-Palestine as if it's the only thing that's really happening right now, and everybody taking a side and just one side. So when I said communities, I meant communities abroad, outside of Israel. So it can be the German communities or in England, in different places. And my ask from communities abroad is to not just pick one side, but rather to pick people's side, the people who are living right now in Israel-Palestine, that all of us want basically the same thing. We want peace, we want safety, we want freedom, and we want liberty. And when I say the communities abroad, I meant communities abroad that are not inside of Israel, the society that I can have a direct effect on it. Well, it depends on what social media I look.
Rula, I'll repeat the question, because otherwise, especially the people online did not hear anything. The question was whether your impression is that one side or the other, if you want to talk sides, is stronger or louder.
I have a statistic to share. Some research institute on online trends showed me that on TikTok, in the very first month of the war, there were 80 million views and likes in favor of Israel with the hashtags supporting Israel, and billions in favor of Palestine. So that shows you maybe young people where they lean. I do think when we talk about general societies, the movement we see on the street is not representing the general society, which in large is still in favor of Israel. Also because of racist reasons, they recognize more, the Western society of Israel, and they are more fearful of, those Palestinian walking with kafiyas and stuff. So it's also in the background. But I do think that those movements on the street, they do not represent the larger public. And we do have an ask, as Rula said, from those people that we're happy that they're engaged. And by the way, we're happy that they engage in favor of Palestine. people should be supporting the Palestinian struggle for liberty and equality and independence in the world, right? We're not saying otherwise. It's actually a very good thing, right? After so many years of occupation. But in the same breath, you need to remember that both of the people, in different degrees, in different ways, are victims of reality, and it's either both will continue to lose and die out of this reality, or both will win out of a different reality.
There was a question here in the front.
Thank you very much for being here. And I just have a question. How has the next government, the post-Netanyahu government, has to be composed, that you feel a glimpse of your ideas realized? And would you be ready to enter this government?
Rula is going to become the next Prime Minister of Israel.
I think we're all in support of that.
First Palestinian Prime Minister.
If not jailed before, but it's good to dream. It keeps you optimistic. Well, what we dream of, our politics, is to have a government that represents the people who live inside of Israel. So we believe in a government that has also exactly Jewish parliament and also Palestinians in it. We believe in a government that would give us equality to all citizens of Israel, because right now we don't have it, and we believe in the government that understands the benefits and works for the people who live in Israel. That is our dream. That is the government that we really want. But right now, in reality, we want a government that holds a discourse that speaks about the benefits of the two people living on both sides, and understanding that continuing these acts of continuously war between Israelis and Palestinians won't benefit anyone. So maybe we will dream, less, and ask for a government that really sees that having more wars is not going to help us, not going to help any of our future. And of course, we dream of a government that has more left people in it, and left views and left politics. But right now, even in Israel, the left wing isn't really surviving, isn't really there. I think we see ourselves as a grassroots movement. We will keep on being a grassroots movement, because we believe that building that political will take us some more time in our society. But we do wish that people who have ideas like us be able to enter the next government. So maybe we can have all, a bigger, breath.
Another question. No, okay. Then one question there in the back, and then there is another question here, and then there is another one there in the back.
My name is Jörn Böhmer. I'm from the New Israel Fund Germany, and I would like to thank you very, very much for everything that you said and everything that you do. And I would like to inform the audience, if you're looking for a way to support standing together. The New Israel Fund is, the Standing Together is one of the major grantees of the New Israel Fund, an organization that collects donations to support democratic civil society in Israel. And there is also New Israel Fund Deutschland. So if you go on the website, you will be able to donate for Standing Together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll go on first. And there is a question from the online audience. The German government has adopted the security of the state of Israel as a raison d'etat, reason of state, deutsche Staatsräson. How does the reaction from the German government so far compare with your interpretation of security?
Okay. I'm going to enter a minefield. So I'm hoping not to explode on a small mine. But we've been meeting with some German politicians from the coalition here in the last few days. It is important to us to meet whomever agree to meet with us and to try and convey our message. Even if we don't share the same ideology, it's important for us to really talk and to convince. And unfortunately, some of the times it seems a bit frustrating to speak with people that are saying every third sentence, we believe the right of Israel to exist. And then we say, okay, of course. And then we say, but there is a war right now, and you cannot just automatically support, the government of Israel and give them a blank check. But we believe the right of Israel to exist. Okay, we've been through that.
Is a true conversation.
Let's move on. It was a true conversation.
It is.
Let's move on. And it seems that for some of them, it's kind of impossible to say the word Palestinians. And we do want to convey this message of saying, again, I guess we said it a lot of times in this panel already, but really looking and seeing the interests of the Israeli people is something different than automatically support the policies of the Israeli government. We are Israelis, a Palestinian Israeli, a Jewish Israeli, and we need something different from your government. You know that for us, when we look at the news, we've seen your president coming to Israel, your chancellor coming to Israel, the Minister of Foreign Affairs coming 3 times to Israel already during this war. And it's been portrayed as if we get automatic support, point, nothing else. And I know that in the 10th sentence, we acknowledge it. We are very political animals, right? In the 10th sentence, we also read that they criticize the settlers' violence. Good, amazing. It's really important. But maybe if our public will be able to hear something more nuanced, something that is not an open, blank check policy of supporting the Israelis' policies no matter what, we will have more space in our society to operate and to talk about peace without being those naives that are talking about Israeli-Palestinian peace in a time of war. You can really help. You can really build on these tendencies of creating a wider space also internationally. And it's important. It's important because we know your values. We know your government. It's different than, the approach to Israel, because other countries will get a different approach. And we understand the history. We understand why it's existing. But right now, we need to remember that it does not serve the Israeli public at all.
A question back there. And then another one here.
Sorry. I'm not sure, maybe my question is going to be a bit vague, but could you maybe talk a bit about the right of return of Palestinians? And my question is if your vision of a solution includes the right of return, which is granted by the UN of Palestinians. And if yes, how would you imagine it?
Well, when I talk about a solution, I say a solution to what's happening right now. Today, I think that since the ceasefire stopped, today was, I think, one of the bloodiest days of bombing Gaza. The images I saw on my way here all day long were horrifying, of killed children, families. And I think when we talk about solutions right now, we talk about immediate things that we need to do in order to stop the bloodshed. I think people are dying in hundreds each and every day. And I think if we would ask people in Gaza, what do you really want right now? They are shouting it out loud in videos that they are filming from the rebels. They want this war to stop. They want the airstrikes to stop. They want to go back to their homes in the north of Gaza. And I think a solution is a solution that looks on how do we stop the war that is going right now. And only when we stop that war that's happening right now, only then we can really sit down and we can talk. And we can talk about historical justice. And we can talk about bigger solutions that have been going on with us for so many years. But I think the instant thing we should do right now is to understand how to stop the wars and the bloodshed and the killings of innocent people in Gaza.
Maybe I can be a bit more blunt, but just saying that at some points there is a tension between, you know, the moment and the ability to move further and the ability to hold historic justice. We do need to understand we need to move forward quickly, urgently from here, and we are being sometimes asked, by the way, only from abroad. It never comes up in the Palestinian local context or the Jewish local context. No one ever asks us, but what about the right of return? As much as no one asks us, one state or two states? People in Gaza don't stop and say, wait, one state or two states? They care more about their survival at the moment. So this historic justice thing, it's a very true thing, but it's very far from our realities at the moment.
Another question from the online audience. What can I say to a German colleague here in Germany who said about the massacre of October 7th, no surprise when you look at the Netanyahu government?
Some empathy never killed anyone.
I think I can answer. It's like at times of war, people become really radical. They become so radical that they lose the ability to be humane and to retain their humanity towards other people and other sides. And I think, again, if we are able, in my society, in our society, to show, to share that pain and to show a humanitarian side to everything that is happening and to ask to stop the killing and the deaths of people, people abroad should be able to do that also.
Thank you. One last question here. Then I have a very short last question, and then we'll release you to the evening, the snow. The two of you might be here for another while, so if you have more questions, meet Rula and Alon-Lee at the bar. But first, there's a question here. Where's the microphone?
Hello, good evening. I would also like to thank you so much for coming and sharing your impressions and views. You said one thing which was maybe the most remarkable quote of the night for me, which is, it is one thing to condemn this situation, it is another thing to change this situation, and I applaud you for that, both of you. I will ask, however, because you constantly and continuously emphasize that it is important to stop the bloodshed, and no one who is of sane mind would disagree with that. I will ask, however, and dare to step, hopefully 2-3 steps forward, saying it had stopped. In your personal view, do you believe that there need to be some sort of reckoning with such a thing as occupation and discrimination in order to actually obtain peace and safety? Or do you really personally believe it doesn't make sense? Let's really just look forward. Because frankly, this is the question that was haunting me for months and maybe even years. And I am, like many people right now, watching two sides of social media constantly, like we all are. So I wonder, really, in this safe space, do you believe in reckoning? Does it make sense? And if so, how would it look like?
You mean reconciliation?
Yes.
So we need, as we said and we stressed this entire evening, we need an immediate solution to somehow move further away from this moment. We're still even not post-traumatic, we're in the trauma at the moment, both sides. And yes, we need to be seeking and doing everything we can to also continue moving after we moved from this, hopefully, move from this moment, to move into a permanent solution. And yes, in order to have a permanent solution, we need to acknowledge a lot of wrongs, a lot of crimes, a lot of fears, a lot of traumas, including, by the way, historic traumas that were not done by the Palestinians. Let's admit it. The Jewish people in Israel is also suffering from some historic traumas that you may know a little bit about from history, and we need to acknowledge this entire thing. And reconciliation means that first there's acknowledgement. First, you can see who you're talking to, who you're seeing as a person on the other side, and understand that they're human. They're not an enemy only. They're not only people that wants to throw you to the sea or to destroy you. They're here, they want to live, and as much as you have your traumas and your fears and your history and the things that you carry with you in your bones and on your back, they have the same. And I do think when it will be people to people, we have amazing people living on our land. Amazing. The amount of solidarity we've seen since the 7th of October, the ability of people to step in instead of the state and to take responsibility on places our country, our state just vanished. It was amazing to see. And also in the Palestinian society. And I do think when people will be able to see each other not from the aim of the rifle, which is what we see right now, but to see each other as people that are in the process of changing our reality, we will be able to also create this reconciliation and understanding that, yes, there was a Nakba. Yes, people lost their houses. Yes, maybe I live right now in a house, I don't, but some people live right now in a house that was owned by someone else before. Yes, it's all true, but only if we're not only holding it in order to condemn, to shout as strong as possible, to hold an historic justice and not to let go. Only if we hold it as a base to move further, we will be able to talk about solutions that recognize the historic justice, and maybe it will take decades. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with first stopping the bloodshed, then moving to a cold peace. It's okay. What we're seeing with Egypt, for example, is an amazing example. Egypt was the most dreadful enemy of Israel. The generation of my parents, they feared Egypt. People died in Sinai in a terrible war. The national trauma of the 73 war was a huge trauma. But maybe it's also something to understand that maybe peace is possible. It's cold, it's not perfect, but they're not enemies anymore. There's no war, people are not dying. And you know what, maybe another point about that is that maybe it also draws the line of what does it mean to have a victory in a war. Because maybe a victory in a war means that you don't pass the war to the next generation. And that's what happened with Egypt. And it's an amazing thing.
Thank you very much, both of you. I have one last question, because we have a room full of people here and more people who are watching online. Okay, maybe there's one last question that I want to bring in from here. Somebody's asking, why didn't you talk about anti-Semitism in the talk and how it affects also Jewish people all around the world?
I do think we touched on some of the responses of international political forces. A lot of them are in the left. Sometimes there are so much in the left that it seems like they're meeting the right wing in a circle. But I do think that it's interesting to see. And I'm very much in the left in Israel, right? Like there's no further left in Israel than standing together at the moment. But it's interesting to see that sometimes there's a special treatment that is kept and to Israel and to the Jewish people living in Israel. Sometimes Jewish people living in other countries that have nothing to do with Israel are being blamed for something Israel is doing, right? And it's not cool, it's not just, it's not something you can accept. And another thing that I think is very interesting to think about is that anti-Semitism is not like any other form of racism. In other forms of racism, you look at the other as inferior to you, as someone that is lower to you in the social ladder, dirty even, like not someone that is equal to you. In anti-Semitism, a lot of the times you look at the other, the Jewish person, as superior to you, as someone that holds this almost magical power of control, of power, of something. And it's sometimes because of that, it's hard to recognize anti-Semitism as a form of racism and to feel it as thing. I think that is something, a little thing to do with why there is so much anti-Semitism in political movements that in general are seeking for a good thing in the world, but are having this problematic message with them. And I don't think it should be accepted, and it exists, unfortunately, also in the left.
Okay, my last question for both of you. Maybe if you can pick one thing that you feel each and every one of us here in this room, in the audience, could do, if they want to support standing together, what would that be?
Well, I think, the thing we're doing right now is having people coming here and listening to us and hearing about the complexity, our reality, and hearing voices who come literally from Israel, Palestine, and talking about what's happening and how you can really help by taking these voices and give them to other platforms and letting other people, more people, hear our voices and the discourse we're trying to bring, and us calling out for a different path, and how we really build that political will inside of the Israeli society. So I think it's important just, advocate and bring our voice to different platforms. We have our social media, we have our activists, we have leaders in standing together that all of them would love to help talking to other people in other platforms. So you can always reach out to us and we can have, more public rallies or more Zoom talks where we can even think together on what can be done, not just inside of the Israeli society, but in societies, again, abroad. So it would be really helpful if you can take this voice, the voice that speaks of that complexity, that speak about a reality that is really complicated, but inside all of that complexity is still able to retain its humanity in such difficult times where people are being very radicalized into just one side, and bring that voice that says that we are here because we believe in the lives of the people who live in Israel, Palestine. And we are here because we need a different path that speaks for the two peoples who live there, for liberty, for justice, and for peace.
I will say something very practical. Donations. Movements run on people, and our movement is a grassroots movement. We are growing, but we need also support. Any kind of support we can get, but also financial support. It's very important for us when we look at the coming year. It's not going to end tomorrow morning. Even after the ceasefire, even after the more permanent ceasefire, we are going to deal with guns that have been handed to civil militias of the right wing. 24,000 pieces of gun that are spread to our societies, they're going to remain. We're going to deal with racism, with laws that are targeting Palestinian citizens of Israel, persecutions. We need to face this upcoming year and years with the best abilities possible. So, if you can support us, please support us. There's also a new a project that we're doing, which is the Friends of Standing Together community. It's a global community that we just started a week and a half ago. There are flyers, by the way, on the exit. One of them is a white flyer. This Friends of Standing Together community is a global community of supporters where you can be very much informed on what is going on, come on Zooms, but also ask the question of how can you organize locally to be better equipped with answers, with materials, maybe organize a Zoom for your community to explain the situation and bring a leadership member, maybe a Palestinian citizen of Israel to explain something, maybe organize a parlor in your salon. So this community of people you can engage and also be getting the tools from us to better, build circles around you to even better the situation of your communities here that are very much polarized at the moment as well. So we urge you to support in any possible way, to join this community and spread the message, please. Israel is not a flat story. It's not good against the bad ones. Yes, there's power dynamics. Yes, one is occupied by the other. We recognize those things and we don't deny them. But there are people, innocent people on both sides, and we all deserve a better reality. And again, it's either we're going on the path of mutual destruction and continue to lose from this reality, or we both win. And that's a message that should be spreaded as strong as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alon-Lee. Thank you, Rula. Thank you to all of you who have come here tonight, who have been with us in this discussion. I hope you'll have a wonderful evening. As I said before, approach the two of them if you have more questions or more things you want to talk about. And here you see the upcoming Taz Talks. So if you want to come over again, it's a very cozy place here. Thank you very much and good night.